In this lesson, we're going to look at graphing linear equations using the intercepts.
All right, so what is an x-intercept and a y-intercept? An x-intercept is a point at which the line crosses the x-intercept, and the y-intercept is the point at which the line crosses the y-axis. So let's remember, for the x-intercept, it's crossing the x-axis, and the point at which it's crossing the y-intercept, it's crossing the y-axis. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to draw ourselves a line. All right, and this line goes through both the x-axis and the y-axis. So let's take a look first of all at this x-axis and the x-intercept. Notice how it crosses the x-axis at 2, 0. This is the place at which it intercepts that x-axis. So the x-intercept is at a 2, 0. Now let's take a look at the y-intercept and where it crosses the y-axis. So it's crossing right here, and that point is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is at a 0, 5. I didn't move side by side, I just went straight up to a 0, 5. So our y-intercept is located at a 0, 5. Now something else I should mention is that when you have the x-intercept, the y is going to be 0. And when you have the y-intercept, the x is going to be 0. So y is equal to 0 in the case of the x-intercept. And in the case of the y-intercept, x is equal to 0.
All right, so example 1, how do I identify the intercepts from a graph? Let's take a look at the two graphs provided. Remember, the x and the y-intercepts are where the line crosses the x-axis and where it crosses the y-axis. So if I looked at the x-intercept, it is crossing right over here at the 5. Now, we can write this two different ways depending on how it is asked. You could say that it is at 5, 0. But you might also be asked to just give the x-intercept, in which sometimes then you might just write the 5. For the y-intercept, remember this is where it is crossing the y-axis, and so the y-intercept is at 0, we went over 0 and up 5, and then it could also be considered to be written as just 5. All right, so our next one, our x-intercept and our y-intercept. So we're looking at our x-intercept then is at 2, 0, or we might just write it as a 2. Our y-intercept is at 0, negative 3, or we could say negative 3. All right, so I'd like you to look at the two that we've just identified, the x and the y-intercepts, and see if you can see a pattern. With the x-intercepts, let's just take a look at the 5, 0, and the x-intercept for the second one, where we have the x-intercept being 2, 0. One of the things I want you to note is that if your x-intercept, notice that the y is going to be at 0. All right, the y value, the y coordinate is at 0. Now when we take a look and at the y-intercepts, let's also notice that we have the x's in both of these are at 0 because they're crossing that y-intercept. The x's are going to always be 0, and this is going to be important as we talk about graphing them. All right, so how do I draw a line given the intercepts? So for the first one, we have an x-intercept of 5 and our y-intercept of 4. Remember, this is the x-axis running horizontally, and our y-intercept is running vertically. So our x-intercept is at 5, so I would just plot my point at 5. Pay attention here. We have to be careful with the units here. Each line is at 2. And then our y-intercept then is at 4. So once you have those 2 points, then we're just able to connect those and graph these, graph it with the intercepts. So the second one then, I have an x-intercept at a -1 and a y-intercept at a 6. And again, I'm just going to connect and graph them using those 2 intercepts. All right, so how do I graph the linear function using the intercepts? So find the x and the y-intercept and then graph using the intercepts. All right, so now we need to look at this equation, 6x plus 3y is equal to 36. And we need to determine where it's going to cross the x-axis and the y-axis. So if you could remember what we had mentioned before about that x-intercept and the y-intercept, remember when we had the x-intercept, the y-coordinate was 0. And when we looked for the y-intercept, that x-coordinate was 0. So I like to write a little xy table to help organize. We can either put the, I'm just going to start and go 0, 0. All right, so we're going to find that x and the y-intercept by putting one of the coordinates as 0. All right, so if I plug in 0 then in my equation for x, I have 6 times 0 plus 3y is equal to 36. Now notice then 6 times 0 is 0, so I'm left with then 3y is equal to 12, and then I'm going to, so y is going to be then equal to 4. All right, so now when x is 0, y is 4, that's the y-intercept. And now let's go ahead and plug it in for when the y is 0, that will give us the x-intercept. So I'm going to then continue and I'm going to have 6x plus 3, but now what we're saying is that y is 0 is equal to 36. So we have 6x, and then that canceled out is equal to 36. And so then let's divide, and the x is going to be equal to then 6. So now I know my x-intercept is 6. So let's go ahead now and we're going to plot these intercepts. I have then 0, 4. I'm going 0 and then up 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is my y-intercept at the 0, 4. And notice then we have 6, 0, and that's going to be the x-intercept. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, there it is. All right. And now once you have 2 points, remember you only need 2 points to graph a line. So now I'm going to then connect the dots and I will have that graphed. All right, so for our next one, we have 5x minus y is equal to 5. Let's take a look. I'm going to then make my xy table. And again, I'm signing 0 for x and for y. And I'm going to be plugging in 0. So I have 5 times 0 minus y is equal to 5. All right, so 5 times 0 cancels out. I have negative y is equal to 5. And I don't want a negative y, so I'll divide both sides by -1, and y is going to be equal to -5. So when x is 0, y is going to be -5. There's our y-intercept. Now let's find our x-intercept by plugging in 0 for the y. So I will take then 5x minus now 0 is equal to 5. So I'll have 5x is equal to 5. And we'll divide by 5, and x will then be equal to then 1. So our x and our y-intercepts, we have -5 and 1. So I'm going to go 0, -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's our y-intercept. Our x-intercept is at 1, 0. And so again, now we have 2 points that we are able to then draw our line. All right, so for number 3, we have 4/10 x plus 2.3 y, and that's equal to 46. All right, again, we're looking for the x and the y-intercepts. So I'm going to plug in zeros because that's where they're going to cross those axes. And let's start by taking 0.4 times 0 plus 2.3y is equal to 46. and I have 2.3y is equal to 46. Now I'm going to divide by 2.3, and y is going to give us then 46 divided by 2.3, and we're going to have 20, and then I'll have for the y-axis, or for the x-axis, I'm sorry, I'm going to take 0.4x plus 2.3 times y, which is 0, is equal to 46. All right, so we have 0.4x is equal to 46. And that is going to be x is equal to 115. All right, now that's going to be really hard for us to put on this graph, so we're just going to label the point. So y is 20 and x is 115. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to have 0, 20, and we're just not even going to really use our, let's make sure that we say that this is at 20. And then our x-intercept is going to be all over here. Let's just say that that's at 115. And now we can just go ahead and connect our dots, and we have that one graphed. All right, so for our next one, we have y is equal to negative 5x plus 4. All right, so we can get, again, our x and our y table, and we can go 0 and 0. All right, now this one we could put it back into standard form to make it easier. I'm just going to show you what would happen if we don't, and you can graph this one. These just are not going to be as easy as the ones that you saw that were in standard form. So I'm going to place x, so I'll have y is equal to negative 5 times 0 plus 4. And y then is going to be equal to 4. So in that case, that's pretty easy. Then when we go to find our x-intercept by plugging in 0 for y, we're going to have 0 is equal to negative 5x plus 4. All right, so now basically it's like we have everything on one side of our equation. We don't want that. So let's bring this 5x over. And now we have 5x is equal to 4. So then when we go solve, we're going to divide by 5, and x will be equal to then 4/5. So it's just a little bit more maneuvering around when you have it in slope-intercept form than you do if it's in standard form. And we're going to be learning in one of the future lessons about the easiest way to graph problems like number 4. And this probably is not the method that you would choose, but for now we're going to graph using this method. So I'm going to have 0, 4. I'm going to go up 4 for my y-intercept, and then the x-intercept then is at 4/5. So it's not quite 5/5, so it's going to be really close to that 1 right there. And then we're going to have a line that comes up like this.